Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about episode 4 of the television series Chucky. I've got my co-hosts Chucky and Tiffany right here with me, so let's get to it. Before we start talking about episode 4, just a quick note on last week's episode. So, during last week it was the WWE pay-per-view Halloween Havoc. Now, I'm a big fan of wrestling, as any regular viewers of the channel will know, and Chucky was in fact the guest host for Halloween Havoc. He had a bunch of different segments throughout the pay-per-view, and if you are a huge Chucky fan and you want as much Chucky in your life as possible, then make sure you go back and check out Halloween Havoc. I'm going to be doing a feature soon on the channel about the relationship that wrestling has with horror, so keep an eye out for that. Right, now, on to episode 4. So, the episode begins with Jake running around the hospital checking on the various survivors. When he speaks to Lexi, she recounts her near-death experience with Chucky and blames Jake for giving the doll to her sister. She also blames Jake for Oliver's death. Jake tries to apologise and reason with her, but she refuses to listen. Devon's mum questions Devon and asks if Jake or Chucky were present at the party, and when Devon tells her that Chucky was there, she tells Devon that Oliver was murdered and that he didn't die in the fire. Miraculously, it looks like Oliver was the only casualty in the previous episode. There are needles and scalpels in the title sequence for this particular episode, which makes sense given that the majority of the action is set in and around the hospital. Now, tensions come to a head when Junior's parents and Lexi's parents get into a verbal exchange in the hospital, working out who was to blame for the fire. Devon's detective mum steps in and breaks up the fight, and she also tells them that Oliver was stabbed to death and to make sure that their children are available for questioning. During this whole exchange, both Devon and Junior are both mentioned as potential suspects. Junior because of the pressure he's under at school, and Devon because of his obsession with true crime podcasts. And of course his own podcast that he's been doing. So Lexi and Jake become uneasy allies because Lexi knows that Jake is the only one who believes that Chucky is in fact responsible for the killings. They investigate the burnt out house and try to find Chucky. We'll be returning to them a little bit later on in the episode. Devon researches Chucky, and we briefly see a picture of Tiffany Valentine amongst other web articles referencing the events of the movies. Amongst the articles is a piece that reads as follows. Now, because I obviously make notes while I am watching the show, I paused the episode at exactly the right time to have this article on screen, so I thought I might as well screen cap it so that I could read it back to you guys for anybody who missed it. So, verbatim. After the brutal murder of his parents at the hands of an unknown assailant, Charles Lee Ray was placed in a boys' home in South Jersey. However, he later returned to his hometown of Hackensack before moving to Chicago, where he resided until his death in 1988 in a toy store where, according to legend, he transferred his soul into a good guy doll. For months, he was said to be a model resident, interacting with his peers and supervisors without incident. However, it wasn't long before young Charles began to exhibit the extreme antisocial behaviour for which he was soon to become notorious. There we go, so that was that full article. Then we get a flashback. During this flashback sequence, we see an orphanage in 1972 where a teenage Charles reads the other children Peter Pan. The casting for the teenage Charles is absolutely excellent. He looks like a young Brad Dourif, if you've ever seen any pictures of Brad Dourif when he was a teenager. He has an altercation with a surly janitor as well, which will become significant a little bit later on. Teenage Charles leads his group of loyal orphans into the woods under the pretense of role-playing as Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. He leads the pack of children to the dead body of the janitor and proclaims that they have killed Captain Hook. The children run off screaming, all except for one boy who remains and pokes the maggot-infested body with a stick. Now, I love the use of Peter Pan here, given that Chucky in some ways is a boy who will never grow up now that he is stuck in the body of this demonic doll. So I really love that they used Peter Pan as the story in which the teenage Charles enraptures the children. I thought that was very clever. Now, Chucky doesn't actually appear in the episode until later on, but when he does, it is quite the reveal. He's been burnt in the fire, and the mangled and melted burnt side of his face is really quite terrifying. I'm hoping that they will do a repro of that in doll form and in Funko Pop form and in any form that they possibly can, because I will damn sure be buying it. Lexi and Jake have a heated discussion, and Lexi falls through the banisters of the upper floor. Chucky tries to persuade Jake to let her go, but Jake refuses to become a killer. They are interrupted by the arrival of Detective Peyton, who picks the charred Chucky up to return him to Caroline. Now, I think this is a really important moment in the series because it's really the moment where Lexi and Jake start to trust each other and their relationship begins to change. Detective Peyton takes Jake, Lexi, and Chucky back to the hospital, but they are separated when Devon's detective mum asks Jake if she can speak to him alone. Lexi then searches the hospital for Chucky. Now, in the next sequence, we are treated to one of the best kills of the series so far. Chucky is alone in Caroline's room with Detective Peyton. He throws a scalpel at Peyton's back, who falls over backwards, and the scalpel lodges deep into his spine. Prone and unable to move, he is forced to watch as Chucky retrieves bundles of dirty needles from the sharps disposal bin and proceeds to stab Peyton over and over again until he's basically a pincushion and dies and bleeds out. It's an absolutely brutal kill and definitely one of the best of the series so far. It really does make me wonder how they're going to up the ante in the next episode. Before the episode ends, we return to the orphanage era, and Charles gives Andy Caputo, which is the name of the young boy, interesting that he's named Andy, he gives him the severed hand of the dead janitor, and it makes me think that he was probably setting up young Andy Caputo for the murder of this janitor, because then we see the teenage Charles leave the orphanage. What happens next, I guess we'll have to work out in the next episode. Hopefully it's going to continue in this chronological order so that we can see what happens to Charles Lee Ray right up until the moment where we see him in the toy store in the very first movie. Now, in the final part of the episode, Devon tells Lexi what he has learned about Charles Lee Ray online, and it's kind of surprising that he hasn't come across him up until this point, given his obsession with true crime and given where they live, but whatever, it's totally fine. Jake is interrogated by Devon's mum, but before he can tell her the truth, Chucky pulls the cord on Caroline's life support machine, causing a massive panic in the hospital. All of the main characters congregate on Caroline's room and discover the body of Detective Peyton, who really does look like a pincushion at this point, with needles sticking out from his chest. While the adults are all distracted, Chucky smiles horribly and flips off Lexi, Jake, and Devon. This brazen risk by Chucky is an amazing moment and the perfect end to the episode. For me, this is the best episode so far. Now, I've been really pleased to see that this series has got fantastic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, and it really does seem to be lauding an awful lot of praise at the moment. I'm so glad that other people are enjoying this show as much as I am. So that was my recap for episode 4. Make sure you check out my previous recaps for the other 3 episodes, and thank you so much for watching. As always, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Big love to y'all. I'll see you next week. Oh hey, looks like you stuck around right until the end of the video. Thank you so much for supporting my content, I really appreciate it. This channel is still in its infancy at the moment. Over here you should see a couple more videos that you can enjoy, and there should be a subscribe orb as well. Give that a click for me, you'd really make my day. Thanks for watching.